The suns of Zereth 9 hung low in the twin sky, one a molten orange, the other a pale, sickly green, casting long, warped shadows across the cracked ochre sands of the Kthar basin. Dust devils spiraled like drunken dancers between the crooked stalls of the market, their whirls lifting scraps of woven synth leather and the faint scent of burnt ozone. This was no ordinary bazaar. It was a crossroads of species, a chaotic symphony of chirps, grunts, and guttural syllables echoing beneath the sagging awnings of tarps stitched from salvaged spacecraft hulls. Vendors hawked glowing crystals that hummed with unstable energy, cages of six-legged lizards that blinked with 3 eyes each, and vials of liquid that shifted color with the holder's mood. Amidst the chaos, a hush fell over one corner like a dropped curtain. A crowd had gathered, not out of curiosity, but anticipation, like vultures circling a wounded beast. At the center stood a wooden platform, its surface stained with old spills of who knew what. On it, a man knelt, wrists bound behind his back with thick, biometallic cuffs that pulsed faintly, as if alive. He was human, rare in this part of the galaxy, where humans were either long gone or forgotten relics of a forgotten war. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with grime and sweat, but his eyes, deep brown and defiant, refused to look down. His name was Joran. He hadn't spoken it aloud in weeks, but it still lived inside him, a quiet ember. He'd been captured near the ruins of an old relay station, mistaken for a smuggler or a spy. Truth was, he was neither. He was a botanist, a soil analyst, sent to study the viability of terraforming on dead worlds. But here, in this market, facts didn't matter. Only value did. The auctioneer was a bulbous, insectoid creature with too many eyes and a voice like grinding stone. He waved a clawed limb over Joran, shouting in a mix of galactic trade and guttural Kthar dialect. Look at him. Lean, but strong. Unbroken. Human specimen. Rare. Perfect for labor, experimentation, or companionship. A few in the crowd chuckled, some with too many teeth. A reptilian buyer in a shimmering cloak raised a bid in glowing credits. Another, a floating jellyfish-like being, pulsed its tentacles in agreement. The numbers climbed. Joran clenched his jaw. He had seen this before, beings bought and sold like spare parts. He had studied alien ecosystems, not alien cruelty. But now he was part of it. Then, a ripple moved through the crowd. Not loud, not violent, but undeniable. People stepped aside, not out of fear, but respect. A woman walked forward, tall and regal, her presence parting the throng like a ship through thick water. Her skin was a deep, royal purple, smooth as polished stone, and her hair flowed behind her like a river of liquid moonlight, pure white, almost glowing in the dim light. She wore a long, layered robe of iridescent fabric that shifted from indigo to silver as she moved, and around her neck hung a pendant shaped like a spiral galaxy, forged from a metal that didn't exist on Earth. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, were a startling gold, like twin suns trapped in velvet. She didn't speak, didn't gesture. She simply stopped a few feet from the platform and looked at Joran. Not at him like a thing, like a person. The auctioneer blinked several of his eyes at once, a sign of confusion. Ah, Lady Vera, honored guest, you wish to bid. His voice had lost its bluster. Everyone knew Lady Vera. She was wealthy beyond counting, a collector of rare artifacts, ancient texts, and sometimes, beings. But she was not cruel. She was different. She never bought slaves. She rescued them, or so the rumors said. She didn't answer the auctioneer. Instead, she turned her golden gaze to the crowd. Don't hurt him, she said, her voice calm, melodic, yet carrying like a bell through the dry air. I'll buy him. A murmur spread, not of outrage, but awe. She hadn't even looked at the price. She reached into a fold of her robe and withdrew a small, crystalline device. With a soft chime, she activated it. A beam of soft blue light scanned the auctioneer's ledger. The display above flickered, then showed a number so high, the auctioneer choked on his own antennae. That's more than the entire market is worth in a year, he sputtered. Vera remained still. Is he sold or not? The auctioneer glanced at Joran, then back at the number. He swallowed, though he had no throat. Sold, he croaked. The biocuffs on Joran's wrists hissed and fell open. He stumbled forward, catching himself on the edge of the platform. His muscles screamed. For weeks he'd been drugged, starved, treated like cargo. And now, freedom, delivered not by force, but by a single sentence from a purple-skinned woman with hair like snow and eyes like dawn. She stepped closer. "Can you walk?" she asked. Joran nodded, though his legs trembled. I can." "Then do it," she said, not unkindly. "We're leaving." He followed her through the parting crowd, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. Some envious, some angry, some curious. A few hissed under their breath. One lizard-like man spat on the ground near her feet. Vera didn't flinch. She led Joran to a vehicle unlike any he'd ever seen. A sleek, disc-shaped craft that hovered just above the sand, its surface alive with shifting patterns of light. It looked like a living thing, breathing in silence. The side opened with a whisper, revealing a soft, cushioned interior that smelled faintly of rain and something floral, something earth-like. Joran hesitated. "Why?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "Why buy me? You don't even know me." Vera turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You're not a me to most here," she said. "You're a specimen, a curiosity, a tool. But I see something else. I see a man worth saving." She stepped inside. "Now come. We have a long journey." The craft lifted silently, leaving the market behind in a swirl of dust. Joran sat across from her, watching the endless desert blur beneath them. He didn't know where they were going. He didn't know who she was. But for the first time in months, he didn't feel afraid. The journey lasted 2 sun cycles. The craft, which Vera called the Zephyr, flew without wings, without noise, skimming just above the dunes like a stone across water. Inside, the air was cool, the light soft. There were no controls, no screens. Just a single glowing orb in the center that pulsed in time with Vera's breathing. Joran ate for the first time in days, simple nutrient paste, but it tasted like a feast. Vera offered him a drink made from fermented moonblossom nectar, sweet and slightly fizzy. He laughed when it made his tongue tingle. "You laugh like someone who's forgotten how," she said, watching him. "I have," he admitted. Not forgotten, just misplaced it." She smiled, a rare thing, soft and fleeting. Misplaced things can be found again. As they flew, Joran learned bits of her. She wasn't from Zereth 9. She was from a distant system one humans had never mapped. She was a scholar, a historian, a preserver of lost cultures. She traveled the galaxy not to conquer, but to collect, not just objects, but stories. "Every being has a story," she said, "even the ones sold in markets." "And mine?" Joran asked. "You haven't told it yet," she replied. He did, then. In halting words, he spoke of Earth, of his work with the terraforming core, of how his ship had malfunctioned near a black rift, sending him spiraling into unknown space. He spoke of the raiders who captured him, the weeks of being passed from one slaver to another, of nearly losing hope when he was brought to the Kthar market. He didn't cry, but his voice cracked once, and Vera didn't look away. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "You studied soil?" "Yes, to see if dead worlds could grow life again." She tilted her head. "And what did you find?" "Some could. With time. With care." She smiled again. "Then you're not just a man worth saving. You're a man worth listening to." They landed at dusk on a cliffside plateau overlooking a vast, glassy sea that shimmered with colors no Earth sky had ever known. Her home was not a palace, but a structure grown from living stone. Walls that curved like shells, windows that opened and closed like petals. Vines with bioluminescent flowers climbed the pillars, and birds with translucent wings sang in a language of chimes. It was beautiful, peaceful, alive. "This is Aelvora," she said. "My sanctuary." Joran stepped out, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, moss-like ground. "It's incredible. It's home," she said. "And for now, yours too." She showed him to a room, simple, clean, with a bed woven from sky fiber and a window that looked out over the sea. "Rest," she said. "Tomorrow we begin." "Begin what?" he asked. "Your recovery, and perhaps your purpose." He slept deeply that night, the first real sleep in months. No nightmares, no chains, just silence, and the distant song of alien birds. The days that followed were unlike anything Joran had known. He woke each morning to the scent of blooming night orchids and the sound of wind chimes made from crystal shards. Vera was always there, calm, steady, never pushing, never demanding. She gave him clothes, soft, flowing garments in deep blues and silvers. She taught him words in her language, not for necessity, but for connection. She laughed when he mispronounced Shayla as Shula, and he laughed too, surprised at the sound. She introduced him to her world. Her home was filled with wonders. Books bound in living leather that whispered when opened, paintings that shifted with the viewer's mood, and a garden where plants responded to music. One vine curled toward him when he hummed an old earth lullaby his mother used to sing. "You have a gentle voice," Vera said. "The flora likes it. I didn't know plants had opinions." "They do. They just don't shout." He began to heal. His body grew stronger. His mind, once fogged with fear and exhaustion, cleared. He started helping her in the garden, learning how her species nurtured life in ways humans never imagined. They use sound, light, and intention, no chemicals, no machines. "Life responds to care," she said, "not control." One evening, as they sat by a small fire pit watching the twin moons rise, one silver, one violet, Joran asked the question that had been growing inside him. Why me? There were others in that market, others who needed saving. Why by me? Vera stirred the flames with a slender stick. The fire danced in her golden eyes. "Because I saw you," she said simply. "Not just a human, not just a body. I saw the way you held your head, like you still believed in something, even when they treated you like nothing." He looked down. "I didn't believe in much. But you didn't break," she said. "That's rare. And valuable." He didn't answer. The truth was, he still didn't feel saved. He felt suspended, between worlds, between lives. Then, 3 weeks after his rescue, the sky changed. It began with a ripple in the air, a distortion, like heat over asphalt. Then came the sound, a low, grinding hum that made the ground tremble. Vera stood instantly, her face sharp with recognition. "They've found us," she said. "Who?" "The Obsidian Hand," she said. "Mercenaries, slavers. They track rare beings. And you're the rarest of all right now." Joran's stomach dropped. "They'll come here. They already are." From the cliffs, dark shapes emerged. Sleek, angular ships with jagged wings, painted black as void. They descended like vultures, landing in the valley below with heavy thuds. Hatches opened. Armored figures stepped out, clad in spiked armor, their faces hidden behind masks that glowed red. They moved in formation, scanning the land with pulse rifles. Vera grabbed Joran's arm. "We have to go. Now." "But your home can be rebuilt." "You cannot." They ran to the Zephyr, which had been hidden beneath a camouflaged tarp. Vera activated it with a touch. The ship hummed to life, rising just as the first blast hit the garden. A plasma bolt exploded against a flowering tree, turning it to ash. More shots followed. The air sizzled. "We can't outrun them," Joran said, watching the ships lift into pursuit. "No," Vera agreed. "But we can outsmart them." She tapped the central orb. The Zephyr tilted sharply, diving toward a narrow canyon. The enemy ships followed, but their bulk made them slower. One clipped a cliffside and exploded in a burst of green flame. The others split, trying to flank. Joran gripped the seat. "What now?" Vera's hands moved over the orb, not with panic, but precision. "There's a storm coming, a solar squall. It disrupts all signals, all navigation. If we can reach it, and if we can't, then we fight." He stared at her. "You? Fight?" She gave him a small, fierce smile. "I didn't survive this long by running, Joran." The canyon twisted like a serpent. The Zephyr darted through it, skimming inches from the walls. Behind them, one ship fired. The blast grazed the rear, sending a jolt through the cabin. Lights flickered. The orb dimmed. "We're damaged," Joran shouted. "Hold on." She pulled the ship into a vertical climb, then flipped it sideways, slipping through a crack so narrow Joran thought they'd be crushed. The pursuing ship couldn't follow. It crashed into the rock with a deafening roar. But two remained. They burst from the canyon into open sky just as the horizon turned purple. The solar storm was upon them, waves of charged particles rippling across the atmosphere, turning the sky into a swirling aurora of red and gold. The enemy ships wavered, their systems flickering. One spun out of control, vanishing into the storm. The last ship, however, was different. It had shielding, pressed forward, its weapons charging. Vera's face was tight with focus. "They won't stop. Not until you're captured." Joran looked at her. "Then let them have me. You don't have to die for me." She turned to him, her golden eyes blazing. Don't you understand? I didn't save you to lose you. I saved you because you matter. Not as a specimen. Not as a curiosity. As a person. As Joran. The ship fired. The Zephyr shuddered. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The orb went dark. They were falling. The crash was brutal. The Zephyr tore through a grove of crystal trees before slamming into the side of a dune, half buried in sand. Smoke curled from its hull. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of dying circuits. Joran groaned, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. He unbuckled himself and crawled to Vera. She was unconscious, her purple skin pale, her white hair matted with dust. He checked her pulse. Faint but there. Outside, the enemy ship landed with a heavy thud. Boots crunched on sand. The hatch opened. Joran looked around. The Zephyr was dead. No weapons. No escape. He had nothing. Then he saw it, the pendant around Vera's neck. The spiral galaxy. He remembered her saying it was made of a metal not from this galaxy. He remembered the way it glowed when she was near life. He took it gently, placed it in his pocket. The slavers approached, rifles raised. Their leader stepped forward, a hulking figure with a voice like gravel. Human. Hands where we can see them. Joran stood slowly, raising his hands. But he didn't feel fear. He felt something else. Resolve. You want me? He said. Fine. But leave her. She's not part of this. The leader laughed. She's the one who stole you. She dies. Joran's fingers closed around the pendant. He thought of earth, of soil, of life growing in dead places, of Vera's voice saying, "You're a man worth saving." He stepped forward. Then you'll have to go through me. The slaver raised his rifle, and the pendant flared. A pulse of light erupted from Joran's hand. Not fire, not energy, but something deeper. A wave of pure resonance. The slavers cried out as their weapons shorted, their armor locking up. The leader fell to his knees, clutching his helmet. The ground trembled. From the sand, tiny green shoots pushed through. Then more. Vines, leaves, flowers unknown to this world. Life, growing where there had been none. Joran didn't understand, but he felt it, the connection. The soil, the soul, the story. And somewhere, beneath the dust, Vera stirred. Her golden eyes fluttering open just in time to see the impossible. A garden rising from the desert, and the man she saved standing at its heart, glowing like a star born from earth. The air shimmered with an unnatural warmth as the tiny green shoots multiplied, spiraling upward like eager hands reaching for the twin suns. Vines thickened in seconds, curling around shattered crystal trees, weaving through the wreckage of the Zephyr, climbing over the stunned slavers who now scrambled backward, their mechanical armor sparking and useless. Flowers bloomed in bursts of color, crimson, gold, indigo. Petals opening with soft chimes, releasing a fragrance that was both alien and achingly familiar to Joran. It smelled like spring on earth, like damp soil after rain, like home. He stood in the center of it all, the pendant still clutched in his hand, pulsing gently against his palm like a second heartbeat. He hadn't meant to do it. He hadn't even known he could. But something had awakened inside him. Something buried beneath months of fear and captivity. Connection. Not just to the pendant, but to the land, to the air, to the very molecules of this forgotten world. He was a botanist, yes, but perhaps he had always been more. Perhaps the accident that stranded him here had changed him. Subtly, in ways he hadn't understood. His cells adapting, his DNA resonating with the energy of the rift he'd crossed. Or perhaps it was something deeper, older. Something tied to the stories Vera had spoken of, the forgotten threads between life and those who nurtured it. Vera pushed herself up on one elbow, her golden eyes wide with awe. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her gaze said everything. Wonder, pride, a flicker of something warmer, something deeper than gratitude. The slavers fled, tripping over vines that seemed to reach for them, dragging their boots into the sand like living roots. Their ship powered up erratically and lifted off, wobbling into the storm before vanishing into the aurora. Silence returned, broken only by the rustle of new leaves and the distant cry of a skybird startled by the sudden forest. Joran turned to Vera. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, still staring at the garden. "No, just amazed." She touched a nearby flower, its petals folded gently around her fingers, then released, as if recognizing her. This shouldn't be possible. Life doesn't grow like this. Not without centuries. I didn't do it alone. Joran said softly. I think it was you. Your pendant. Your belief. She looked down at her neck, then realized it was gone. Joran placed it back into her hand. The metal was warm, the spiral galaxy design glowing faintly. It reacted to you, she whispered, but not just to your touch, to your intent. You wanted to protect, to grow, to save. He swallowed. I didn't know I still could. She rose slowly, brushing sand from her robes. You see, Joran, you're not just a man worth saving. You're a man worth believing in. From that moment, something shifted between them. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but like the slow unfurling of a leaf in sunlight. They rebuilt the Zephyr together, scavenging parts from the wreckage and the surrounding desert, guided by Vera's knowledge and Joran's growing intuition. He began to understand the ship, not through buttons or wires, but through feeling. A hum in the hull, a pulse in the engine, like a heartbeat beneath metal skin. Vera watched him with quiet fascination, her respect deepening into something tender, something unspoken. They no longer spoke of the past as something broken. Instead, they spoke of the future, of places to go, species to meet, lost gardens to restore. Joran told her of Earth's dying forests, of deserts where no plant dared grow. Vera listened, her eyes alight. Then we'll go there, she said, not to fix it for them, but to show them it can be done. One night, beneath a sky streaked with meteor showers, they sat on the edge of the plateau, the new garden thriving behind them. Fireflies, bioluminescent insects native to Aelvora, danced in the air, their light reflecting in Vera's white hair like stars caught in a net. You know, Joran said, I used to think I was just a scientist, a man with a shovel and a data pad. I measured pH levels and nitrogen content. I thought that was all that mattered. And now? She asked, not looking at him. Now I think maybe I was meant to do more. Not just study life, but awaken it. She turned to him then, her golden eyes soft. You already have. He smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached his eyes. Over the weeks that followed, their bond grew like the garden, organic, resilient, nourished by quiet moments. She taught him how to meditate with the living stone of her home, how to listen to the whispers of ancient trees that remembered the birth of stars. He taught her earth songs, simple melodies about rivers and rain, which she hummed back in her own haunting, melodic tongue. Once, when she was ill from a rare desert fever, Joran stayed by her side for 3 days, feeding her water infused with healing herbs he discovered in the new garden. He sang to her, his voice rough but steady, and the plants around her room grew toward the sound, their leaves pulsing with gentle light. When she recovered, she looked at him with tears in her eyes, purple-skinned, white-haired, regal, and said, No one has ever stayed, not like you did. He didn't reply with words. He simply took her hand. They began traveling again, not as rescuer and rescued, but as partners. The Zephyr, now repaired and enhanced with Joran's intuitive modifications, moved faster, quieter, as if it knew their thoughts before they spoke them. They visited dying worlds, planets stripped of life by war or greed, and left behind pockets of green, of song, of hope. On a gray moon where nothing had grown in 1,000 years, Joran knelt in the dust, placed his hands on the soil, and closed his eyes. Vera stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, the other holding the pendant aloft. And slowly, impossibly, color returned to the surface. They were no longer just a wealthy alien woman and a lost human. They were a force, a legend, whispered in market stalls and starports. The gardener and the keeper, the ones who bring life where there is none. But with legend came danger. Rumors spread. The Obsidian Hand wasn't the only slaver group. Others took interest. Scientists who wanted to dissect Joran, corporations who wanted to weaponize the pendant, warlords who sought to control the power of rebirth. One night, as they slept in the Zephyr orbiting a quiet moon, their ship was boarded by stealth drones. Silent, spider-like machines that crawled through the vents, seeking the pendant, seeking him. Joran woke to the hum of intrusion. He didn't panic. He reached for Vera, shook her gently. She came awake like a blade unsheathed, her body moving with practiced grace. Together, they disabled the drones, not with violence but with sound. Joran hummed a low tone, one he'd learned from the garden, and Vera sang a countermelody in her native tongue. The drones shuddered, their circuits overwhelmed by harmonic resonance, and dropped like dead insects. Afterward, as they floated in zero gravity. Catching their breath, Vera looked at him and said, "We can't keep running." "No," he agreed. "We need to stop them. For good." She nodded. "There's a place. The Archive of Inala. A sanctuary of knowledge, guarded by the Keepers of Origin. If we can reach it, we can learn the truth about the pendant. About you. And if we don't?" She took his hand, her purple fingers intertwining with his. "Then we make our own truth." They set course for Inala, a planet hidden in a nebula so dense it bent light itself. But as they approached the edge of the system, a massive fleet emerged from the dark, dozens of ships, black and jagged, bearing the insignia of the Dominion of Ash, a brutal empire that consumed worlds and erased cultures. Their leader, a warlord known only as Kor the Hollow, had heard the rumors. He wanted the power of rebirth, and he would burn 1,000 stars to claim it. The Zephyr was outgunned, outnumbered. Escape seemed impossible. But Joran looked at Vera, at the woman who had seen him when no one else would, who had called him worth saving when he felt worthless, and he felt something rise within him. Not fear, not anger, but certainty. He placed a hand on the ship's orb. "This isn't just your ship," he whispered. "It's ours." And the Zephyr answered. Light flared from its core. The hull shimmered, expanding, shifting, growing. Vines of living metal spiraled along its surface. Bioluminescent flowers bloomed across its wings. The ship wasn't just alive. It was awake. Vera stared, breathless. "You bonded with it?" Joran smiled. "I think it was waiting for me." As the Dominion fleet advanced, weapons charging, the Zephyr didn't flee. It sang. A wave of pure, harmonic energy burst from its core. Not destructive, but transformative. The pulse rippled through space, touching the enemy ships. And where it passed, metal softened. Weapons bloomed into flowers. Armor cracked open to reveal vines and moss. The warships didn't explode. They grew. Kor screamed as his command bridge filled with ivy and sunlight. And in the quiet that followed, as the once dead fleet drifted like a floating garden through the stars, Joran and Vera sat side by side, hands clasped, watching the rebirth unfold. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You see life," she said, "even in the darkest places." He looked at her, at the woman who had changed his life with 3 words, "Don't hurt him," and whispered, "I see it because you showed me how." And the journey was far from over. The Dominion of Ash never recovered. Not from fire or war, but from life. Where their warships once loomed like shadows over the stars, now floated drifting sanctuaries of green and bloom, tended by former soldiers who, after hearing the song of the Zephyr, laid down their weapons and took up seeds instead. The story of the gardener and the keeper spread like roots through cracked earth, no longer whispered in fear, but sung in hope. Joran and Vera did not return to war. They returned to peace. They found the Archive of Inala, hidden within a ringed planet wrapped in clouds of silver mist. The keepers, ancient, robed beings of light and memory, welcomed them not as intruders, but as long-awaited guests. The pendant, they revealed, was no mere artifact. It was a seed of origin, one of a dozen scattered across the universe after the first garden, a mythical place where all life began. It responded not to power, but to purity of heart. It had chosen Vera centuries ago, not for her wealth, but for her compassion. And now it had chosen Joran, not because he was human, but because he carried the soul of a world healer. "You are not just a man," the eldest keeper said, his voice like wind through ancient trees. "You are a bridge, between species, between life and loss, between endings and beginnings." Joran looked at Vera, and she smiled, the kind of smile that made the stars seem brighter. They stayed at Inala for a season, learning, healing, growing. And when they left, it was not to fight, but to build. They returned to Aelvora, but it was no longer just a sanctuary. It became a haven, a school, a refuge for those broken by war, by slavery, by loss. Joran taught the language of soil and root, showing beings of all species how to awaken life in dead places. Vera taught history, not as a list of battles, but as a tapestry of survival, love, and quiet courage. The garden expanded, winding around new homes, beneath archways of living crystal, into courtyards where children laughed in languages no one had spoken in centuries. And then, one spring morning, when the twin suns rose in perfect alignment and the air was thick with the scent of moon blossoms, Joran knelt in the garden, not in surrender, but in love. He held out a ring, not of metal or gem, but of woven vine and starlight, grown from the first plant they had nurtured together. "Vera," he said, his voice steady, full of the earthborn honesty she had come to cherish. "You saved me when I was lost. You saw me when no one else could. I don't just want to walk beside you. I want to grow with you, for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her golden eyes, tears that shimmered like liquid light. She did not answer with words. She pulled him up, kissed him deeply, and the entire garden burst into bloom all at once, as if the planet itself was celebrating. Their wedding was not held in a grand hall, but beneath the great sky arch, where the northern lights danced every night. There were no priests, only witnesses, the people they had saved, the children who played among the flowers, the birds that sang in harmony. They exchanged vows not in silence, but in music. Joran hummed an old earth lullaby, and Vera answered in the sacred tongue of her ancestors, their voices weaving together like roots and rain. They were married under a canopy of glowing vines, with the pendant resting between them, pulsing gently, as if it too was alive with joy. Years passed, not quickly, not slowly, just fully. And one morning, as Joran worked in the nursery, teaching a group of younglings how to speak to seeds, Vera came to him, her face glowing with a secret. She placed his hand on her belly. "You remember how life finds a way?" she whispered. He froze, then looked into her eyes. "No." She nodded, laughing. "Yes." They had a daughter first, born under a meteor shower, her skin a soft lavender, her hair a cascade of silver white, her eyes a deep, warm brown, just like her father's. They named her Leora, which meant Song of Dawn. She laughed early, walked late, and made flowers bloom just by crawling toward them. 2 years later came a son, Kalen, keeper of light. He had Vera's golden eyes and Joran's stubborn chin. He spoke in riddles by age 3 and could calm storms with a hum. Joran and Vera raised them not in luxury, but in love. They taught them the soil, the stars, the value of a quiet act of kindness. They showed them how to listen to the world, how to heal without force, how to lead not with power, but with presence. The zephyr still rested in the valley, older now, its hull covered in climbing jasmine and soft moss, but still humming when the wind blew just right. Sometimes, on clear nights, the family would climb aboard, not to flee but to fly. They'd drift above the sea, watching the bioluminescent waves, telling stories of how it all began. In a dusty market, with a cry of mercy, with a woman who said, "Don't hurt him. I'll buy him. You see a human. I see a man worth saving." And as the stars blinked above them, Joran would hold Vera close, their children asleep between them, and whisper, "We did good, didn't we?" She would smile, lean her head on his shoulder, and say, "We're just getting started." And so they lived not in a fairy tale but in something deeper, something real, a life built not on grand battles or endless adventure, but on quiet mornings, shared laughter, the touch of hands grown familiar, the miracle of new life blooming where once there was only dust. They were no longer just Joran the botanist and Vera the collector. They were a family, and their story, like the garden, would go on forever. Years turned to legend, and legend to song. The garden thrived, stretching across valleys and into the hearts of those it saved. Joran and Vera grew older, their hands wrinkled but still intertwined, their love deeper than any star. Their children played among the flowers, then raised children of their own beneath the same twin suns. The zephyr rested in peace, wrapped in vines, a monument to a journey that changed the galaxy. No grand throne, no empire, just a home filled with laughter, light, and life. They had faced darkness and answered with growth, fear with courage, loneliness with love. And in the end, they did not just find peace, they planted it. And it bloomed forever,